Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Today is the today we are learning the second Perek of Peah. Today is also the beginning of the first raffle drawing for our raffle. Before I get to the raffle, today's shir is sponsored B'iloi Nishmas Aaron Nachum Ben Simcha HaKohen, Yeshua Mordechai Ben Shepsel, Bracha Sar Bashmol Leib, Binyam Moshe Ben Yosef. May the Neshamas have an aliyah and refuah shlema to Ad Sarah Bas Leah. And today we're going to get into the first raffle. There were a few people who submitted the responses. If you are listening to this on YouTube or other platforms and you want to be part of our weekly raffle, please send me your contact email.com. That's KOLNEANESHAMA1, the number one at gmail.com, and we will log your information and include you in our weekly raffle. This weekly raffle is sponsored anonymously by a member of our group, and it's for $50. It's $50 for the prize for now. And there are three ways to get into the raffle. One is to learn, to confirm that you learned all 6 days a week with us. And the second way is confirm that you did Chazara on Shabbos. And the third way is to bring others to the group and tell us who they are. So we have a few people who submitted the entries to the raffle, and we're going to pull up the raffle and spin the wheel. If you can see this here. Oh, bear with me. Let's see. Side by side. Can you see the wheel here? Here? I don't know if you can see this wheel or not. Maybe, maybe not. But the winner is Shragi Schreiber. Congratulations, you are the winner of today's raffle for $50. We'll be in touch later to get you your prize. Mazel tov. I don't know if you saw that on the wheel, or if it came up on the screen. But if they didn't, the Shragi Schreiber. Maybe you have to redo that. Hold on. Can you tell me if you saw that on the screen? Give me a thumbs up.
I could not see it.
You cannot see it. Okay. Well, it's fun enough for Shragi Schreiber. We'll have to figure out the technicality of it later on for next week. But Shragi Schreiber, good. Mazel tov, you are the winner of this week's raffle. And we'll figure out the tech support for next week. Okay, here we go. Jumping into Perek Bays of Peah. Okay. The pasuk says, as we read yesterday, you shall not finish off the end of your field to harvest. You have to leave a corner for the matnas aniyim. So that's where we learn that that Peah must be given from each field separately. So Peah, that's what the one field cannot fulfill the requirements for Peah from a different field. And certainly if there's different crops, if there's different barriers, that's all going to be discussed right now. So, starting the mission of Elo Mafsik and Peah, these following things separate a crop into different fields regarding Peah. Hanachava Shludis, a stream or an irrigation canal that runs through a field. If you have like a stream of water, it's separated into two fields. That's going to separate it into two sections. A private road or a public road. Sometimes you have roads. You go to like the different parts of down to the Midwest. You can see like roads going through fields and that go on for miles and miles and miles. It's considered two separate roads, two separate fields. Ushvil harabim, ushvil hayachid, or a public or private path. Some paths are larger than others. Some are just for the workers to go to walk through, and some are for public use, but they're not big enough for cars or for vehicles. Hakavua b'yimosachama b'yimosachashamim. So these paths are in constant use. These roads are in constant use, both in the summer season when the crops are harvested and the rainy season when the crops are growing. Sometimes you only have a path that's used in the summer after the harvest. It's not doing any damage to the crops, and it'll be off limits during the winter time when the crops are growing. A strip of fallow land or land that is plowed but not planted. Sometimes you'll see fields that are left empty to give them a break. Zera acher, or you have a strip of land planted with different species. You have two fields right next to each other. One has species A, one has species B, and it's considered to be two different fields. Now we're going to talk about other cases. Kotzer l'shachas mafsik. If someone cuts down a strip of unripe produce in his field to use as fodder, as like animal food, it separates the field into two. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim say that's not a separation. It doesn't separate the field into two unless he also plowed the strip after cutting down the unripe produce. So, if you have it's classified as two separate fields, you have to give 2 times Peah. Now, that's probably going to be the same amount as if you give it only one field, but it's taking like a fraction of the crop. But regardless, you have to give the Peah from 2 different fields. If you have 2 different fields. Mishnah Beis. It's so wide that the land cannot be harvested at once. Meaning that if you are in you have to be able to. There's a machlokas over here whether you have to be in the canal in order to reach both sides of it, or the canal has to be small enough that you can reach over the canal and be able to harvest some of the crops with the tools that you're using. If you can't, then it counts as 2. Rabbi Yehuda Omer of seconds. Rabbi Yehuda says that it does separate the field into 2 and requires a to each side to get Peah. Okay, so now and if the land is divided by all the hills that are dug with a hoe, with one of the tools, it's a hilly strip that can only be plowed by hand because it's too steep for the animals, for the oxen to plow the field, because that's just not going to work. So even though the ox cannot pass through it with the plowing tools, who knows the Peah? Even so, he can give 1 Peah for the whole field. Is not dependent on the oxen. Mishnah Gimel. Hakol mafsik l'zerayim ve'eino mafsik le'ilah. All the separators that are mentioned above in the first Mishnayos separate produce that is planted every year. Things that are planted in the ground and only go one season at a time. Then, but in a field of a single species of fruit trees, God did it. That only works if a wall separates the fields. You go into an apple orchard, you go into to a vineyard, let's say. You if you have a wall that separates at least 10 tvachim, then that would um, then then you give two payas, except in higher ser kotesh in a mafsik. If the branches on either side of the wall intertwine above it, and then that's not considered to be a hefsik, and you give one payah. Elanosin payah, whether you give one payah, all the trees in the field. You know, um, there are they do have trees that do intertwine, especially when it comes to vines for the vineyard. You can you will have that sometimes. Well, the charuvin, but by carrot trees, kol haroin zeh, as long as they can see one another. In the field is so huge that you can see the carrot trees one into the other side. You would give one payah for all. Rabbi Gamliel said, no again ayu base abba nostin payah achas l'zeisin shahayu lahem b'chol ruach. Rabbi said that in his father's house it was the custom to give a single payah for all the olive trees that they owned on each side of the city. But the charuvin kol haroin zedzeh. And in the case of carrot trees, as long as they could see one another, as the Tanakama said. So they would give one payah for all the olive trees, and in the carrot trees they would, as long as they could see it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok said in Gamliel's name, that they gave just one payah for even for carrot trees that they had around the entire city. Even different sides of the city, they did not separate the carrot trees into different fields. What's so special about the carrot? According to Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Tzadok, Gamliel held that the carrot trees are more difficult to separate than olive trees. So according to the Tanakama, Gamliel held that the carrot trees are easy to separate. Moving on to Mishnah Hay. Hazoreya es sadehum min echad. If someone plants his field with one species of produce, afal pi shehu oseu shtei glagos, no simpe achas. Even if he gathers it in as two separate crops, he leaves one payah to the whole field. Zarish name, but if he planted his field with two species of produce, like just two different types, not the same thing. Afal pisha us dorn achas, even though he said he gathers them as one crop, he harvests everything together. No, he's piling them both together. No sting stay payas. He still leaves two payas, one for each species. Now we're going to talk about a case where it does make a difference whether the field is gathered in as one crop or two crops. Hazoreh as sadeu shnei, meaning chitin. If someone plants his field two types of wheat, wheat is an example. The same would be if he uses two varieties of any other species. In other words, you have different types of onions, you have different types of celery, different types of vegetables, which all within the same family. If you plant two variations of the same species, asan going achas, nosin pe achas. So if he gathers it in as one single crop, then they consider it to be parts of one field and at least one payah for both of them. Stay granos, or stay payahs. But if he gathers them in as two crops, and they're in separate they're in separate sections, then they consider it to be separate fields, and it leaves two payas, one for each variety. Moving on to Mishnah Vav. Ma'isa, story time. Ma'isa Shazara Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzvah Bifnei Rabbi Gamliel. So there's a story that there was one time that Rabbi Shimon from Mitzvah, he planted two varieties of wheat on one parcel of land, and he brought the question of how many payers to give to Rabbi Gamliel, who did not know the answer. So they went up to the Sanhedrin in the base of Migdash and asked the question, what's the law? Amar Nachum Halavlar. So Nachum the scribe said before the Sanhedrin, the Kubal Ani Rabbi Miyasha. I have received a tradition from the Miyasha, Shekil Miyaba, who received it from my father, Shekil Ben Azugos, who received it from the Zugos. The Zugos, they appeared during Perek, so we get to them in about a year or so, where you have the different Zugos, which were pairs. One was the Bastin, and one was the Nasi in the times of the Tanoim. I think it overlapped, but during the Chorban, pre-Chorban, post-Chorban, the different generations. It's all listed in the Perek. Shekiblu ben Hanavim, who received it from the prophets. Halach Moshe Sinai, who there was a law given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Sinai, it was not written down. What was the law? Regarding one who plants his field with two varieties of wheat, in Asan Garn Achas, no stand Peah. If he harvests them as a single crop, he leaves one pair for both. Stay granos, no stay pairs. If he harvested his two crops, he leaves two pairs, one for each type. A couple of things to say on this Mishnah. First of all, how come we left out in the Mishnah from Yeshua and the Shoftim, and there are different generations that were left out from this Mishnah. So the Rishonim said that that you need to quote the later generations and you need to quote the first generations, but you don't need to quote everyone in the middle. So as long as they're establishing that the previous sources, like he says, Hermiashia, and who got it from his father, got it from Zugos, right? That's enough. And then you could say from there, went back all the way back to Navi, that you established both ends of the connection and you were able to skip the middle people. That's also very important to give credit where credit is due. And, on that note, I do want to say that when I'm preparing the shiurim, I guess I'm looking into the printed svarim, but I also listen to shiurim from other people who have learned Mishnayos. Granted, I'm not the first person giving a share Mishnayos. I might be one of the few that gives a Perek a day, but the content is already out there. And actually, this morning when I was learning today's material, and I was following along with the gray set of the art scroll, the Maggid Shir who I was listening to was actually reading word for word from this very sefer as I was following along. I'm like, so it's all everyone's just giving this share as best they can with whatever sources that are available. And when I quote that I got it from the Pnei Yoshua, from the Shlomo Kluger, I'm actually listening to content from other sources and hopefully remembering what they said and saying it over and share the next day. The Baruch Hashem, that opportunity to get that detail out there. So, I was teaching Torah and I was sharing each other's materials and hopefully doing a good job at keeping the Masorah alive. Other thing to point out on this Mishnah is that this is Rabbi Gamliel again. Now, we discussed in brachos and Perek Aleph that Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin in Yavne, the Yeshiva in Yavne. And here it says that Rabbi Gamliel went with Rabbi Shimon Mitzpeh to the Sanhedrin in the Beis Hamikdash, which was obviously pre-Churban Beis Hamikdash. So I was wondering, like, what's going on here, and I started doing some research this morning, the few minutes that I had, and it turned out there's two different Rabbi Gamliels. The one in this Mishnah seems to be Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin, who lived in the times of the end of Bayashini, and one of his later generations, like one of his grandchildren, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 generations later, was Gamliel the second, who was the Nasi in Yavne. I will do more research on that today and give you more information on that tomorrow, Mr. Shep. And going on to Mishnah Zayin, Sada Shikatsua Goyim. Okay, so now the pasuk says, when you harvest the harvest of your land, meaning that the pay obligation applies only when you harvest your land. But you have that lachem and other mitzvahs as well. That has to be yours. You need to do it. So now, what if the crops are cut down in ways that are not your harvesting? What's the status of those crops? So, sada shekatsua goyim katsua listim. So, a field of crops that are harvested by non-Jews for themselves, very important, because if a non-Jew is working for you, then that's an extension of you, and that counts as if you harvested it. Or if they're harvesting it for themselves, or that robbers came and cut down the crop, they stole it, karshmuad nemolim, or that ants chewed, they chewed the stalks at the bottom, and they detached the stalks from the ground. Shavarta haruach or behema, or that the wind or animals broke down, and they did the damage. Petura, these are all exempt from giving Peah, because in all these cases, the crop that was cut was not your harvest. Therefore, it's not chayiv and Peah. The Mishnah continues, Katzer Chetzia with Katzer Listum Chetzia, that if the owner harvested the first half of it and robbers harvested the second half of it, Petura, they're exempt, Shechalas HaPeah B'Kama, because the pay obligation for the first part of the harvest is left in the crop that is still standing, which has now been cut down in a way that does not require pay. You left the pay there in the corner. Then it got damaged and or got stolen, then too bad. It's not your problem. Katsura listim chetzia, going on to Mishnah Ches, the last Mishnah for today. Katsura listim chetzia v'katzer huchetzia. So now, if the Ganavim harvested the first half of it, and the owner harvested the second half of it, no stain Peah mimasha katzeh. Then the owner only just Peah from the second half of the field that was harvested. Katzer chetzia mochar chetzia. If you harvested half of it and sold the second half of it, so you harvested half, and then he had enough, he wants to sell the rest of the field, so he sells the second half. So halal keach no stain Peah lakol. So the buyer leaves Peah for his half for the whole field. Even though he only bought half the field, the buyer is going to leave the Peah for both his and the other guys that sold to him. Katzer chetzia, the hitish chetzia. So also, if he harvested half of it and he was makdish the second half to the base of Mikdash. Who knows the one who redeems the second half from the temple treasury, he is the one who gives Peah for the entire field, not just the part that he redeemed. That was the end of Perek days. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.